Live on.
Well, we're covering for the fellow money makers, you said. So how much money are you making today?
Okay. All right. Well, let's get started here.
Where's my mods when I need them?
Get this party started, as they say. Okay, first of all, welcome. I think I know everybody in here, at least met folks for the first time today. I'm Nate Wolfe, my wife Jennifer. We are, I guess, the hosts of the Toledo, we call it the Toledo Area Flat Earth or Biblical Cosmology Meetup. We did our first one back, it was a year ago November, if you can imagine that. So we had our anniversary, 1 year anniversary in November. And we hadn't had one for 3-4 months because we had Take on the World. We were gearing up for Take on the World, and then back to school with my family is always chaotic and hectic. And then, of course, I was gearing up for FEIC in Dallas. So we had a couple of months we skipped, but generally we do one about every other month throughout the year, weather permitting. So welcome. I know we have several today from Ohio and several from Michigan. We may have like almost even numbers. It is a Michigan invasion today, which is great. Which is great. One of our kids was born in Michigan. So we have.
Might be having more too.
Yeah, we might be having more. Okay.
Whose football team is better this year?
Well, I tell you what, I don't follow football anymore.
Let's not get inflammatory.
I don't follow football. I left football behind a couple of years ago.
Yesterday.
But let's see. We have about 16 people here today, which is
Still
better than our average. So thank you, Michiganders, and thank you all the Clevelandites and Akronites and all you ites that came over here. We have a couple of presentations today. Before we get into the presentations, I have some housekeeping items that I want to do with you. But Michael Solomon is going to be our first presenter, and very excited about that. Michael is a regular presenter here in Toledo as well as the Cleveland group. And he's going to be sharing some awesome stuff about the P900 and the P1000. And he always has interesting facts for us to think about. So I appreciate his efforts in that. And I will share a little bit, some abbreviated thoughts from my FEIC2019 in Dallas presentation. And then Chris, Bailey, and maybe even Liz, whatever you guys want to share. Chris has a short presentation and maybe some information to share with us. And then we have till about 4-ish. So we'll have some fellowship at the end, just kind of open fellowship if we have time. Also want to let folks know I do have, if anybody's interested, I do have some of my books here today for sale if you want to help support my ministry and family and learn a little bit more about my life, our life. We put a lot of details, starting with me being born in Wisconsin in 1973.
It's an awesome book.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's short and it's large print and there's about 30-something pictures in there, which is very helpful. Most people that read it have told me they've sat down in about 2 hours and just read the whole thing. Maria was the first one to read my entire book, other than Jennifer and I, who did the editing.
It was great.
I do actually have one of Chad Taylor's books here with me for sale as well. So I only have one left. I had brought some to FEIC, and I have one of Andrew Denny's book, which is here, Crushing Conceptualism. And if that title doesn't grab you, read the second title. It's very cool. I also have some Flat Earth informational pamphlets, the trifolds. Some of them are Bible related. Some of them are more sciencey related. I have some of my cards which have all my contact information. So, okay, we're also going to go and eat together for those that want to stay. Some of you already like pre-scheduled, but just raise your hand if you're planning on staying for the meal. I want to make sure I keep them up there. It's about 200 yards this way. Keep them up. 9, 10. We're gonna like 15 or so. And if Jim is coming, I think he's coming. I heard him say reserved for 2 or 3. So we're gonna have at least 15. So I'm going to see if Jennifer will call, and they have something. They have an area.
Fit in the booth anymore.
Yeah, no booth. They have an area that's called the corral. So we may have to. We may either be in like 5 booths or one of the big tables at the corral. So that'll be interesting. But this will be a record-breaking mule fellowship, so that is very cool. All right, so let's see. Let's go ahead and do this. At the end, if we have time, since we got people rolling film here and batteries don't always last forever, let's go ahead and do the presentations first. And then if we have time at the end, we'll just do some more low-key fellowship. And what we've done in the past, since we have a lot of new folks here, will be great. Anybody who chooses to share, you don't have to, but we can just go around through the tables, share, hey, my name's so-and-so, I live over in this area, you know, maybe just short bit about how you kind of came into this flat earth thing. And so we'll see what time we have. But without further ado, we will start with Michael Solomon and let him go first. Woo, yeah. My big head's gonna be in the way. Now it is for sure.
Okay, so we'll get queued up here.
No pressure, no pressure.
All right, this is a camera review in the making for a while. I've been, can we turn out the front lights? Or
Good question. I think it might turn out all of them, but we might be able to dim them.
Oh,
There you go.
dim 'em. There you go. That's sweet. Good. Okay. Okay. So this camera review has been a long time in coming. So I pumped a lot of info into it. So I'm going to just go through it if you have any questions. So it's basically a camera review and talking about some information about basic photography as well. So this is a second part of the P factor, the phenomenon of the P900, and it truly is a phenomenon. This camera, Nikon has no idea it's because of us that this camera sold very well. Well, no, wait, they probably do, but they're not going to admit it, you know. So this is the part 2 of that video. So let's start with what is the P900, and the P900 is a prosumer camera in the Nikon Coolpix line. All right, so it actually comes from a line of cameras that are point and shoots, and that's where the P900 came from. Nikon has made, Nikon has made 156 models of the Coolpix camera, and from 1997 to 2018. And so this is the latest version of that line. Okay, so what is a Coolpix camera? I'm just gonna go through the basics here. It's a bridge camera. So a bridge camera is a camera that's in between a point and shoot and a DSLR, okay? Big honkin' pro beastie, all right? So it's a combination between those two, because if you notice, it kind of looks like as what's called a form factor of a DSLR. So it has a feel of a DSLR, but the lens is permanent. Now, one would think that's a limitation. That depends on how long the lens is. So these are all the, P900 is not a new thing. There's been bridge cameras for a long time, as you saw with just the Coolpix line. Even Minolta had one. Where is this? I don't have it up here, but I was surprised to see that Minolta actually had one. All right, so what makes the P900 so special? We're gonna start with the P900. Oh, by the way, I'm not saying, this review is not to say which is better. We're just talking about the two cameras, all right? Because at the end of the day, yes, this is the P1000, but this is still the P900, okay? It's still pretty awesome. So there's a specific reason to get one above the other. It's not necessarily, oh, I have a P900, it's crap now, I can't afford a P1000. That's not true, all right? Because if you have this, you're doing good. Because there's nothing like this in the industry, nothing, all right? And if you look at all the top 10, top 15 cameras, especially the top 5 cameras, bridge cameras, both of these are still on the list. This is still on the list, and this is technically old now. All right, the P900 is still on the list, so it's still pretty awesome. So what's so special about it? Exclusivity. All right, it has a 2,000 millimeter lens, only found on the P900. There's no other bridge camera that has this, and there's some pretty nice bridge cameras out there. Okay, but none of them have this type of power. And a pro can't buy a 2,000 millimeter lens. Now, I've been shooting for 35 years. I do photography professionally. I love it, all right? But I can't buy a 2,000 millimeter lens, all right? So this is what I have access to, all right? So Tamron makes 150, 600 millimeter, and as far as 600 millimeter compared to 2,000 and 3,000 is paltry, but that's it. That's all I can afford. But you know, I can get higher 800 millimeter. This is my wife's favorite lens. She loves this lens. All right, she'll never have it, but she loves it because I can't justify it. When you look at that, and this guy, man, he's like, you know, please take that picture. And that thing is only 200 to 500 millimeter. It's 26 grand. That must be insane. Now, you can get a 2,000 millimeter Nikon, but it'll cost you 32 grand. Okay, as much as a nice car. And that thing is huge. It comes with its own luggage. Not a camera bag, luggage, all right?
Hope it's on wheels.
No, I don't think so, actually. You need a dolly. So you have a Canon 11,000. And then this other Canon here. So this is all that you can buy to come up to the focal length of these two cameras. So that's just to tell you where this lies in the photographic world. So as a pro, I can't touch this. Okay. This lens is considered really, this is a good standard, you know, every pro has to have this lens, but this is only 200 millimeter. This is 2,000, this is 3,000, so just to give you a point of reference, okay? Okay, so, all right, so here's the amazing part, availability. You can get these things in these places here, all right? Basically, you're looking at a telescope with a camera built onto it. So when you pay the price for these, just to give you some perspective here, this is $500 now, so it's $100 down from where it used to be. This is the P1000, it is $1,000. You're paying for the lens, the camera's free, okay? Because lenses are expensive, as you can see, all right? So you're basically paying for the lens. So the amazing part is that these cameras are available anywhere. And now we have the P1000, all right? So we're gonna talk about the differences between the two and then let you decide what you want to do. Okay, let's look at the basic layout. So as you can see, here's P900, P1000, and they're very similar with a couple of layout differences. The FN button, this is a function button. It's put in a different spot. If you notice little things, like you see this little rim around here, okay, that's actually important. The P1000 doesn't have that. And then, as you can see here, this is the most important dial. This is your primary command dial, and then you have the command dial here. If you'll notice your functions on this dial, on the P1000, there's the moon mode and the bird mode. On here, you don't have that. That's never happened in the photographic world, ever. Okay, there's never been a moon mode, first of all. And then they've changed it from deep in the interior of the camera. It's on the P900. You just have to go into the main menu and get it, okay? Then they switched it over to the top. Why did they do that? All right, so, you know, you're not gonna get anybody to admit it, but you know it's because of us. And this camera is very popular with people who shoot astronomy and birds. Okay, makes sense. Birders love this camera. Okay, so yeah, this is the layout. So the back of the camera is very similar, all right? So the layout is different. As you can see, the size, okay, is much bigger because the lens is just bigger, and there's more stuff in this one opposed to the P900. Okay, so remote. The P1000, you can get a remote for it. You can actually use the app on your phone to control the P1000. The P900 doesn't have that ability, but the P1000 app is horrible. It's called Snapchat, or I can't remember the name, but it's really bad. All right. I'm sorry.
SnapBridge or something?
Thank you, SnapBridge. Thank you, SnapBridge. I tried it. It didn't even see the camera. Okay. Now my wife blamed it on me, and she's probably right. So I'm going to get her. But it does have bad reviews though. But I'm going to get my wife to fix it, and she's real good at making stuff talk to each other. But this remote is $50, and it does everything that you need the camera to do. You just can't see it. Okay, and that's what the phone would do. The app would do. So those are the advantages there. The build, the P1000 is a little beefier because it's bigger and it has more glass. So it's beefier. If you pick both of them up, it's not like this one feels like a toy, because it doesn't. But this is a heavier camera, not only because of the lens, but because they actually use more material to construct it, because it just has more in it. So it's a beefier build. The power, they both use different batteries. Sorry, okay, it would be convenient to use the same battery, but they both use different batteries. The P1000 batteries is a little bigger than the P900. Usually with batteries, bigger is better because it lasts longer, but I use these professionally, and I'll go through a battery and a half for an all-day shoot. That's not bad. Okay, so I'm shooting video and stills. Okay, let's see. Filter size, the P1000 is 87 millimeter, and the P900 is 67. That matters because you need to buy filters, and I'll get into the filters in a little bit, but the filter size matters. Okay, resolution. All right, now this is an interesting point. Both of them are 16 megapixel. That may sound small compared to other cameras, but you wouldn't want to go lower than that, but 16 works fine, and you'll see some of the shots I'm taking, okay? The processor. The processor is part of resolution. The processor is small. Some people say it's as small as a cell phone. No, it is not, okay? But it is small compared to other processors. But because of the software written around the sensor, because of the software written around the sensor and the processor built into the camera, it uses the sensor very well, and it takes incredibly sharp pictures and gives you a lot of control. One of the critiques you'll hear is that both of these cameras are feature crazy. There's a lot of features. I can't talk about all of them because that would be like a 3-4-parter. But the resolution, don't let the small processor. One of the things, one of the reasons you can get the long lens is because of the processor size. So that's one of the reasons you can get the lens so long. But again, I use this for corporate shoots, so you know it works. Okay, lens. The P1000 is a 24 to 3000 millimeter. This one is, the P900 is 24 to 2000 millimeter. So they're both the same wide angle, get more in the shot, and this one has 100 more millimeters in focal length than the P900, and it shows. Okay, both of them are Nikkor lenses. They're really high-end glass, and the 3000 millimeter is optical, meaning it's all glass. It's not a digital, like when you zoom with your camera, your phone, if you notice when you zoom with your phone, when you zoom in close, it gets kind of grainy. That's because it's a digital zoom. It's not an optical zoom. It's not glass, okay? These are all glass. That's why they're so heavy, okay? Because they're all glass. And yes, they're heavy, but it's not like carrying around a 50-pound weight. Sometimes people get kind of nuts with this. Oh, it's so heavy. Oh, come on, guys. It's, don't whine so much. It's not that heavy. I like big cameras. Maria likes big cameras because, it's a nice big grip and it's a nice sticky rubbery grip. But we actually like big cameras. And even my pinky works on that instead of doing this, okay? So, we like the bigness of it. Okay, so let's go with the lens for a minute. Let's look at some examples. The basic thing about this camera is now we can see and verify true reality. That's the beauty of this camera. And that's the part that shocks me that it even exists. All right? Because these cameras are actually as powerful as really powerful telescopes. And I mean very powerful telescopes. Those big honking, they're that powerful. And we can buy it from Best Buy, okay, which is pretty amazing. So let's look at this one. I posted this just recently. This was that's the thing I meant to throw in the PowerPoint. These have stabilization, and meaning if you're shaking with your hand, you turn on stabilization, and all of a sudden the picture just stops. And you don't see the shake anymore. And it's really cool, okay? Both of these have that. I think the P1000 stabilization is a bit more intense because it's bigger, all right? It's heavier. So I shot that handheld with the 3000 millimeter completely extended. Okay, so I shot that handheld. And you can see how sharp it is. Okay, it's actually sharper than with this projector here. It's actually sharper than that. If you look at it on the computer screen. So I put the information, the exposure information, because it's important that we learn basic photography. Okay, these cameras are not point and shoot toys. All right, they have a lot of equipment built into them. If you're gonna buy it, it's best to actually learn how to use it, or you're wasting your money, basically. Okay, if you just want to point and shoot, it's a bad idea to get this because you're really overpaying. All right, so you have control of your ISO, your f-stops, shutter speeds, focal length, and we'll get more into that. I actually designed a card just to teach that. Because I teach photography, so I designed this card for my photography students, so I'm offering this. But I put that exposure information there to show that you have that kind of control with these cameras. Focus on a single star, okay? Play. It's not playing. Oh, man. Okay, that's supposed to play. These can actually focus on one single star. Now here's the interesting part. People have had telescopes for, thanks Maria, people have had telescopes for a long time, okay? Why is it they've never focused on one single star? People have had telescopes for decades. They've never focused on one single star. Oh, thank you. With this camera, you can focus on one star. Now a lot of people say, oh, it's not in focus. Okay, I'm a pro photographer, all right? So you see the sharp lines, see the distinct lines on the edges of the lines, inside and out of the star. That means it's in focus. If it were blurry, those lines would be blurred. Now, I actually slowed the star down a bit because it's crazy up there. Those stars like, it's just crazy. But my question is, they had these telescopes like the Celestron and the other big telescope manufacturers. People have been buying these huge telescopes, yet they've never focused on one single star. One tiny little story. I'm trying not to take too much time.
No,
one tiny little story.
Lots of time.
Okay, my wife and I went to a camera store, and we were looking for a tripod for a friend of ours, that guy back there, Daryl wanted us to get some advice on a tripod. So we said we have a friend that has a P1000 and he wants to take pictures of a single star. And so the salesman said, well, and this guy takes pictures of stars and stuff. He's into astronomy. He says, well, you're going to need a special tripod for that if you want to shoot entire constellations and the moon and stuff like that. But if you want to shoot entire constellations and star fields, I said, no, not star fields. He wants to shoot one single star. He needs a tripod that's sturdy for that. Well, if you want to shoot a set of stars, then what you have to do, he literally did not hear us. He was not ignoring us. He didn't hear us. That freaked us out. Maria leaned toward me. She said, did he just hear what we said? I mean, it was creepy, okay? And I said, oh, okay, thank you. And I walked away and I said, how can I communicate to this guy? And so I said, oh, I need a video a tripod for video. Oh, okay, well, let me show you, all right? He literally did not hear us. We know this guy. He was not being rude. He's never rude. He simply didn't hear what we said. Now, that's preconditioning at its worst, okay? So this is the first time that people have been able to focus on a single star, okay? All right, so also we can see beyond the horizon, all right? So this was shot, that was 2,000 millimeter, and I'm zooming out, and where I stopped is important, because as you can see, it's gone. All right, I stopped at 50 millimeter. Now, when you do shots like this, don't zoom all the way out to 24 millimeter. Your eye is equivalent to 50 millimeter, okay? In order to make this legitimate, when you zoom back out, stop at 50. Don't stop at 24, because at 24, everything's much smaller, but that's not natural, okay? That's not what your eye sees, all right? So, you know, the naysayers and the trolls, you know how to do photography, blah, blah. So you can go as long as you want, but always stop at 50 when you're doing a test like this, okay? All right, now this was fun. We were at Miller Road Park Pier and Avon Lake, and this picture was shot, this is the whole thing. We're gonna actually do this again later this year. But, so we shot at, Miller Park Pier to Kelly's Island, 33.7 miles, and that's 570 feet below the horizon. We should not have seen it, all right? So, yep, it's not there. All right, that's 50 millimeter, 70 millimeter, 215 millimeter. Whoa, magic, what do you know?
Look at that.
1,100 millimeter, 3,000 millimeter, 6,000 millimeter. Now, where did I get 6,000 millimeter? Because these cameras have a digital zoom, and they magnify the optical zoom. So sometimes you're gonna need that. And it's pretty good, but it was very foggy that day. It was a mess, okay? So the camera did the best it could, but you can't go beyond the optical. Just, be careful with that, because it can get kind of sloppy. But there it is. So basically, the camera could actually see beyond the curve. Isn't that fascinating? I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Did you have a mirror set up for that?
Yeah, right. I had an orbiting mirror on the drone, and I bounced. That was just weird. I gotta remember that. That's good. All right. The next thing about the differences here is the P1000 has a hot shoe. Okay. For some reason, a lot of people don't talk about the hot shoe. I don't understand that. If you notice, the P900 does not. And the beautiful thing about hot shoe is it increases the flexibility of the camera. I actually use this setup to shoot events. Now, I used to actually use these two. I would carry this one and this one, and so I could have a short zoom and a long zoom. I just carry this, okay? And it's sweet, it's so much fun. Now, the thing about, a little talk about a flash. When you buy a flash or a camera of this magnitude, you cannot just buy any old flash. Like this flash doesn't work very well here. It syncs with the camera and everything. I need to do a whole thing on flash. But it syncs with the camera. When you hit the shutter release, this button here, the flash will go off automatically. But because the lens is so long, say I'm shooting in an auditorium, I'm using like 800 millimeter, all right? And this flash does not have the power to go that far, all right? This one does. So whenever you buy a flash, all flash units are just, the control you have is just astonishing. That's not something to be concerned about. That's just something to learn. So you want to control, you want to deal with two factors. Number one, the tilt and swivel, okay? All right, that's important, all right? And the power, just sheer power. Flash units are extremely powerful. We're gonna go into that a little bit later this year. It's gonna be astonishing, but this little dinky thing is extremely powerful. And for these cameras, well, for this camera, it doesn't quite work on this one because it doesn't have a hot shoot. This, the P1000, in order to shoot that far, you need to deal with a number called a guide number, or GN. So when you look at a flash, it'll say all the specifications, it'll say guide number. What you're looking for is, at the very least, 180, at the most, 200, okay? Then it will work for this camera. It will reach as far as its lenses. Now, you're never gonna get a flash that will work for 3,000 millimeters. It's not gonna happen, okay? It just doesn't exist. But for like 800 to 1,000, a good powerful flash will do you. So if you're looking for, to use this camera for something other than astronomy or flat earth evidence, then you can actually use this to make money. All right, so you don't have to buy it and then you're out $1,000. Okay, make this baby pay for itself. Okay, I mean, whenever we buy equipment, it has to pay for itself within a short period of time, or we're not buying it. So also, you can, oh, I forgot. You can actually add a mic to it. All right, because this camera does incredible video, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And this is a extra mic. All right, now it has a mic built in. It's okay. This is much better. All right, and it actually has a mic port. All right, that's totally pro. All right, this camera does not have that. So that's why I say this camera can be used on a professional basis. This one can semi-pro, because you can actually go to, like, say if you do construction photography, the P900 is perfect for that. All right, so you can shoot details in construction and wide angle and a real tight telephoto on different details of the construction, stuff like that. Again, it's great for birding and shooting animals, that sort of thing. Let's see. This is a dot sight. I don't have one yet, but I'm going to get one. And what this does is it helps you shoot moving subjects. So it's kind of like a finder scope, kind of like on a gun, all right? But you put it on the camera, and what it does is it enables you to focus on the moving object you're shooting on, and then use the lens, okay? So you know how hard it is to focus on a star? It's really irritating. This can help you with that, because stars are so small, because we're so far away from them. Not trillions of miles, all right? But we are far, all right? So this is a really nice accessory to get, and it only works on this camera. I actually saw someone jury rig this to work on the P900, but you kind of have to be handy to do that. Like Daryl, he's good at that sort of thing. So, okay, so let's look at format. This camera will shoot, P900 will shoot JPEGs only, all right? The P1000 shoots JPEG and RAW. Now, there's nothing wrong with JPEGs, and it produces really nice JPEGs, actually. But pros like editing, okay? Pulling the most they can out of an image. So, or if you're just a person that wants more detail out of an image, you don't necessarily have to make money at it, you just want more detail. So, I just had an example here, some of my old cameras. Here's a JPEG, all right? And here's a RAW. And you say, okay, that looks terrible. But that's the point. Okay, RAW, it has all that information all in there that you can just pull out, so you end up with that. So you see the difference. Okay, so it gives you a lot of advantages. Now, the disadvantage to RAW is a big file. So have a nice computer that can handle it and some nice space, but you can to store it. But you can see the difference between these two. And RAW you can save as a in various formats once you edit it. Okay. Now RAW you cannot just shoot it RAW and send it over the internet. You can't do that. By the way, both of these cameras can do that. You can send these. You can set these up with Wi-Fi and send your shots in other places via the web. Okay, both of them can do that. And they're both GPS based, so you can get locations. You can focus on locations and stuff with both of these. All right, so that's the difference between JPEG and RAW.
Can they also hardwire to the computer?
Yes. You can download straight to it. I don't usually do that. You just take the card out.
Yeah.
But it can do that via mini USB. And let's see. That's it. Oh, okay, cool. The P1000 has an HDMI port, which is way cool. What do you have? Let's see. Oh, okay. P900 has HDMI as well. So that's excellent. All right. EVF, electronic viewfinder. A little history on that. This is basically like looking at a little teeny TV, okay? Whereas these are OVF, optical viewfinder. So they're basically like looking through a little window, all right, with these cameras. They both have great EVFs. The P1000's EVF, like everything else on the P1000, is bigger and brighter, all right? If you look at the two, this EVF actually makes your scene even brighter so you can see more of it. Even if it's a dim room, it'll look brighter. You look through the viewfinder and then look on the side and you'll see that inside the camera actually looks brighter, which is a good thing. Okay, let's see. The LCD screen, the P900 is 3 inches, P1000 is 3.2. So it's just bigger, okay? Just a bigger camera. If you'll notice also, with the P900 to use manual focus, which you can do, you have to actually use this dial here to switch over to manual focus and use this dial to, well, actually I'm gonna talk about manual focus in a minute, but since you're looking at the back of the camera, to use manual focus on the P1000, you just flick a switch. Okay, so it's a little easier. They both do manual focus, and they both do it well. You just get to it differently. All right, that's why I say semi-pro, pro. Okay, so there's a difference there. All right, so this is video. So oh man, it did it again. I don't know why I did that. This is a really nice video with the P1000. The P900. This is supposed to play, and it's at 2,000 millimeter, and as you can see, it's tack sharp, and the bees are flying. Thank you, Maria. The bees are flying. Yes, I'm a professional here. So, so the bees are flying, and they're gonna fly in a minute. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this was on a tripod with the P900, no digital zoom, all optical, and no post-editing. All right, so I love it when people say, it's just a toy, it's just like shooting with your phone. Seriously, dude, I mean, does it look like a phone to you? Come on. So it just cracks me up when they say stuff. They don't do any research or anything. And obviously they don't own the camera. So, haters and everything. All right, so the hood. Now I know this sounds like a weird thing to talk about, but the P900 does not come with a hood. The P1000 does. Now that may sound like a little teeny thing, but that's big. Do you know how hard it is to find a hood for this thing? I just recently found one. I haven't bought it yet, so I'll talk about it on Facebook when I buy it. But it looks good. It's about 20 bucks, but it took a long time to find it. And Nikon finally figured it out. Said, you know what? We should put a hood to it. Duh. So now it has a hood. Hoods are important because they protect the lens. okay? Also, they keep extraneous light from coming in and glaring on your lens and messing up your picture. So a hood is a really important thing to use. If you notice, both of these have hoods. All right, I never go out without a hood. Okay, so, oh, there it is. All right, so, all right, focus ring. Okay, this was a stickler. This grip here, that's a grip. It's not a ring. All right, and focusing manually is really a good thing to do. It gives you a lot of freedom. Okay, with the P900, okay, with the P1000, you actually have a actual focusing ring, and well, actually, it's a it's a multi-purpose ring because you can actually tell it to do whatever you want to do. All right, you can program it. The P900 doesn't have that. If you don't know how to do it, the focusing is using this little dial in the back. So you got to spin it and spin it and spin it, and it makes your hair fall out, and it's crazy. Especially when you focus on stars, because stars are constantly moving. So by the time you get in focus, it's gone. All right. So there's a way around that. So with the P900, with the P1000, you flick that switch to manual focus, and no matter what you have this dial doing, it turns. It is a focusing ring at that point. You flick it back to autofocus, and now it does what you designed, what you programmed it to do. So it's a programmable dial, and it hails back to the old days when you had actual, that's a zoom ring, when you actually have focusing ring on the lens. So that's a cool thing. Now, for the P900, since you don't have a focusing ring, you can actually use your secondary zoom switch as a focusing tool, and it works beautifully. All right, so not having the ring is not that big of a deal. Okay, so once I figured that out, I said, oh man, this is great. So focusing with this little zoom ring, so it no longer is used for zooming, but the top switch is used for that anyway. So that's just redundant. So you can use that for other things. So that helps a lot. Okay, so, all right, macro. Macro is when you're taking stuff and you're shooting really close. Both of these cameras are superb macro tools. All right, so if you need to do really tiny work, or you just like shooting small things, or if professionally you need to shoot real intimate detail, all right, once again, you know, they don't do really good detail. Look at that. You know, like any other camera, just give it the proper light it needs for the job. And then you can see all the little imperfections in there. I mean, it's just really, really gorgeous. So, I mean, even the table I was shooting on, look at that.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. So it can focus to about an inch, you know? And it does macro on the 24 millimeter all the way to the 3000 millimeter and 2000 millimeter, which is pretty unique, okay? There's a few other cameras that can do that. Okay, so weather resistance, all right? So yes, it was cold, okay? And Nikon does not claim these are weather resistant, but from use, I can tell you there is a form of weather resistance in them. On this day it was cold, but the day I shot before this was even colder. There was a 20-mile wind. There was freezing water going up on me, the tripod, and the camera. Okay? My tripod actually had ice on it. I like cracked ice off of it. And I got hit with ice cold water with the zoom extended. And that was a couple of weeks ago. And I have used this camera for different photo shoots since then. So it can resist the weather to a certain extent. Okay? Now I wouldn't drop it in water or anything. There's only one camera you can actually do that. Pentax is top when it comes to weather resistance. This guy actually took a Pentax camera and put it in a bucket of mud. I mean, this guy was expensive. The lens on it, he put it in a bucket of mud, and then he put it under his bathroom tub, sink, ran water on it, rinsed it off, and used it.
Wow.
That's Pentax. Don't do that with this camera, especially if you're married. Don't do it. So, if you're single, you can get away with it, but if you're married, don't do it. But it did withstand ice cold water spraying on it, so you don't have to like put it in your coat and all that stuff. Okay, there's another unique thing about this camera. It actually has a virtual horizon. You know when you go to when you see on a plane, they actually have a virtual horizon that's constantly tilting, okay? Both these cameras have it, all right? And that's a really cool feature that can be used to, you know, show people that the horizon constantly rises to your eye level, okay? I haven't done it yet, but somebody on Facebook gave a suggestion to me. I said, oh wow, I'm gonna try that. So, but both of them will do that. You can find it in the main menu, and you go to the little wrench, and that's the and then you go there. That's the main settings. And then you go to monitor, and then when you click on the monitor, it has a bunch of sub menus, and down at the bottom is virtual horizon. You can turn it off and on. And it works really well. It's so cool when you move the camera, it tilts and everything. It's really cool. Okay, so I want to tell you about filters. Now, because of this day and age, using filters isn't that big of a deal anymore because you have photo editors where you can get whatever effect you want. I used to have a whole bunch of filters when I started out. Now, I just use 2. All right, this is a UV filter. Every time you buy a camera, get this. This is cheap insurance, okay? Because if something hits this, you take this off, throw it away, put on another one. You hit that lens in there, that's a data cry, all right? Because it gets expensive. All right, so this is a UV filter, and it helps with some of the clarity in the picture just a little bit, but it's mainly for protection. This is a polarizer, and this is a really cool filter. If you're shooting through glass and there's a lot of reflections, this filter actually has 2 elements, and you can literally dial the reflections away. Now try to do that in post, it's a pain, all right? Say if you're shooting, I was shooting this car, and it had way too many reflections on it. I put a polarizer on my lens, and I dialed the reflections and the highlights, just gone, okay? So this is still very useful. You can fix that in post if you really know what you're doing, okay? Both of these, this one's costing about 30, this one's about 40, but it's well worth it, okay? Okay, so what I want to do is just let you know, when you're getting these cameras, learn some basics in photography. You'll love these cameras a lot more if you do. All right, you'll know what all these little doohickeys are for, okay? Because they're there for a reason. And the more you learn about them, I'm not saying you have to be a big pro, not at all, but just know what aperture priority is, shutter priority is, know what ISO is. The more control you have, the better you're going to get out of these beasties, okay? So what I did was I created a card that shows you the combination of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO and how they work together, okay? And on the back of the card, I wrote down, I have listed here various pertinent terms to daily photography. And I wrote the meanings in normal English language, okay? So you don't, because a lot of people say, because you used to be able to buy these at camera stores. They had stacks of them. You cannot find them now, all right? You can get them online, but they're really confusing and they have too much information. And Maria and I actually worked on this together to put just the right information so that you can actually be on a shoot and use these cards. Yes?
How do you get one of the cards? People are asking.
We're still working on that. You can actually contact me via Facebook and I can send them there. I had them on Facebook Marketplace, but it's not the best place to sell something like this.
Michael Solomon.
Yes.
Facebook page.
Yes, Mike Solomon, and contact me, and then you can get it that way right now. So we're trying to put it on
Or
our
go to
site.
Flat Out Insights on Facebook.
Or that'll work too. Yep. Also, the great thing about this card is indestructible. Okay, it's actually made of a material that people actually use for Braille, and it has rounded edges, so it won't cut anything. And so you can drop it in mud, rinse it off, and keep going.
Acid, too.
Mm?
Acid.
No, not acid. No. And it's not, and you know, if it bends, it's no big deal. Okay. Also, it's designed to fit in any student size camera bag, and a lot of times people say, well, the reason why I don't make these anymore is because you just go online and get this information. Yeah, you're on a shoot. You're trying to shoot some animals. You say, okay, what f-stop should I use for that to get the proper depth of field? Wait a minute, what is depth of field? You're going to go online and figure that out. Trust me, that animal you're trying to shoot isn't going to wait for you. Okay? So you just take this out of your camera bag, look it up, put it back in. If you drop it in some mud, you know, take your water bottle, pour it off, and put it back in your bag. All right? So that's why we designed it to be student-proof, basically. Okay? Because we have students, we know. All right? So that's why I created that. Learn more about photography. I just can't emphasize that more. Learn more about photography, and you're going to love these cameras far more. Okay? Yes, it has a program where you do nothing, the camera does everything. It actually works really well. I tried it. I said, whoa, okay, that's nice, because I don't usually use programs. But you want control, all right? That's how you really, shooting, like for instance, the moon mode, I've never used it because it doesn't give me what I want, okay? So I learned to control the camera so that I could get what's in here, all right? Program mode, you just get what you get. Okay, so in conclusion, all right, both the P900 and the P1000 are outstanding machines. Choose the camera that fits your need. So if you have a P900, sweet, okay? If you look at all the lists online and it says the top 5 bridge cameras and stuff like that, both of these cameras are probably going to be on that list. And the P1000 is probably going to be at the top. And I'm talking 2019. The P1000 is probably going to be at the top, or there's one other camera. So they kind of fluctuate between the two. Okay, Sony makes a camera that's equal, not the focal length, but everything else is equal to this camera. And so Sony, the RX10 Mark IV, and the P1000 kind of trade places every now and then. Okay, but this camera and this camera are still on the best camera list, and they have been ever since they came out. What does that tell you? Okay, so if you have this camera, awesome, you're doing great. If you're wondering, is it worth upgrading? Yes, but it is not absolutely necessary. Okay, so any questions?
It fell down.
Yes.
So when you use the Polaroid lens, does it make the picture darker?
When you use what lens?
The
Polarizer?
the filter, yeah.
Yeah, good question. Actually, no. It enriches your color.
Really?
It like if you were to shoot a field of flowers, it would make all the reds and yellows and greens richer, more saturated. Okay? If you have like a pale sky, that's just like a bland sky, this will give it a nice rich blue. So when you dial it in. Now, the minus part is that when you use this, you lose some light transmission. So you lose about 1.5 stops. Light is measured in stops. I won't go into that. This card explains that, okay? So if you're going to lose some light, so you have to open your aperture a little bit more. But it actually increases the look of your picture. It does not decrease it. It's pretty interesting.
Wow,
Yeah, it looks like it would. That's a good question, but it doesn't.
And the infrared, share a little bit about that.
Infrared is a completely different thing. Infrared filters are kind of pseudo-infrared. They're kind of like these. They're called neutral density filters. And they're really, basically you're taking, you know when welders are welding and they wear that mask? That's what infrared filters really are, okay? And then there's real infrared. Some people have actually taken their P900s, sent them to this guy, and he rebuilds them as infrared cameras. I'm going to one day get one of these used because I'm not doing that. It's not going to happen. But one day I'm going to get another one of these, send it to that guy, and have him change into an infrared camera. Now what infrared does is it only sees infrared. The beauty of that is, if you'll notice when you saw that shot when I was shooting Kelly's Island, and did you saw like the waviness and stuff? Well, that's due to telephoto compression. And when you're using an extreme telephoto, it compresses the air in front of the camera. And air is always moving. The telephoto lens accentuates that movement, and that's what gives you that waviness. If you use infrared, cuts that out. Okay? It cuts out fog, it cuts out mist. Now you could cut out a certain amount of mist and fog with a polarizer. You just dial it right out. It's sweet, so it's worth the money. But infrared cuts out all of that. Oh, but there's only one problem. Infrared can only be seen in black and white. Okay? You can get color, it's just harder. All right? And you cannot meter infrared. There's a meter in both of these cameras, a light meter. There's 3 of them, okay? There's center weighted, spot, and matrix meter. So a center weighted meter looks in the center, takes into account about this much, and ignores the rest of the scene. Matrix meter looks this corner, that corner, this corner, that corner, and then a bunch of spots in between, and gives you a light meter reading that will give you a proper exposure for that scene. Spot meter is right here, dead center, and ignores everything else, okay? None of those meters can read infrared. So you're basically just bracketing, meaning you just shoot 5 shots and get lucky, all right? Just get used to it. So infrared has its downside, but the plus is it does not have the issues of seeing distant scenes that these cameras have. It just cuts all that out.
So is there cameras that you can buy that are just infrared?
Yes, yes. I've never looked at them, so I can't tell you what the expense is, but you can't buy it.
That's interesting. I didn't know that they just come black and white. I do know that telescopes, you can get them in infrared. Then you also see black and white then with those?
You can
too?
do color, it's just harder.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, back in the day, they sold infrared film. Infrared color, infrared black and white. Now, infrared color is interesting because if you shoot a forest, the forest is purple.
Oh, the force is what?
Purple.
Purple.
Sky is a weird color, okay? It looks very sci-fi alienish, okay? So shooting color infrared is fascinating.
Because it's using that red,
Right, so it sees all the colors different. That's why most people just go with the black and white, because what's the point, you know? Any other questions?
Michael,
Hmm?
did you use the polarizer lens in shooting the Kelly's Island?
No, I did not.
You didn't, okay.
No.
I just wonder how different that would look.
Yeah. Now, the thing with a polarizer, it only works, or it works best at a certain angle to the sun. So if the sun is about here, then the scene here works really well. Say if the sun is right here, the polarizer doesn't work that well. Or if it's behind you, it works pretty well too. So it depends on where the sun is. On an overcast day,
Like it was.
it's okay. Yeah. Yes.
I'd just like to let everyone know that if anybody has any interest in either one of those cameras, this gentleman, Michael Solomon, is very well informed, intelligent, and will help you in every kind of way. I spent $1,000 on his recommendation, his expertise, and I've been taking pictures like he's been recommending us to do with the card that he displayed earlier, and with great results, great results. So everything he said, I have to confirm, is 155% correct and true.
And then when it doesn't work, Maria fixes it. As you can see. Thank you. Yes.
If you can take a picture of the stars, is there any way that if you took a picture high enough that you could maybe get a picture of the dome? Has anyone tried?
Fascinating. I think Yahweh created the technology to be viewed, but only to a certain extent, in my opinion. There was this one guy, he became a flat earther. I wish I could find this video, but he became a flat earther. So he decided, he's a pilot, so he decided, I'm gonna fly up to the sun. since the sun isn't 93 million miles away, I'm gonna fly up to it. So he took off and he flew towards the sun, and he never really got there.
Did they come back?
No, he never reached it. It was always out of reach. You know, when you're going towards something, it's going to get closer, you're going to get there eventually, right? He just never got there. It was bizarre. So I think that that technology is see but don't touch, and you can only see so much. So can we shoot the dome? I think it's possible. There's been some old photographs that look kind of weird, okay? Like a shot in Antarctica. Yes.
Well, when I was at FEIC with Cami Nodal, she had a myroscope or a miroscope. And it's just like a toy. Basically, it's like a black cylinder with like a mirror inside of it. And on the top of it, you could like reach and
I saw that.
pretend like you think you're grabbing something,
Yeah.
but it's never there. And it's kind of like how the dome would, like how the sun's there, but it's not really there.
Yeah.
And with the moonlight, always comes to your feet, but you're looking at it and it's hitting your feet, but you can't see somebody else's where it's hitting their feet.
Right.
And it's just like a little toy that like really, I mean, it blew my mind because of how like it kind of explained a little bit more of like where we're at, like, you know, multi-looking glass.
Yes, exactly. My thing is this. Let's be realistic here. Okay, Yahweh exists. He's God. He created this place. Now, let's think about that. We're talking a serious genius. That's a base understatement, all right? So the technology he's going to use, and it's got to be something he's using. I mean, I'm not saying he's up there with a computer, but he creates stuff with that huge, infinite mind of his. So what makes us think we're going to figure this joint out? Okay? Now, we can see it to a certain extent because Scripture says we can. But we're only going to go so far. And I'm okay with that, okay? Because now we've learned so much. You know, now we know all the rest of that stuff is foolish lies, okay? We know that. Oh, by the way, anyone familiar with Master Class? Okay, it's a series of master classes where they have professionals come in and teach what they do. It's a phenomenal series. And guess who's the newest instructor? Neil deGrasse Tyson. You should hear the commercial. It's like, you arrogant. I mean, it's a horrible commercial. And he's talking about, you know, we're going to show you how to think. He actually says that. I'm going to show you how to think, and I'm going to show you how to show your friends how to think. So you can see reality properly. And he's even going to teach about God. Neil deGrasse Tyson. All right? I am willing to pay for that and see that. Okay? So they're trying to hit us hard, and we have given them a lot of headaches. Okay? So that's the beautiful thing about these cameras. They help us don't accept verify. That's what they help us do. And so now we don't have to accept their stuff because now we can see it. There's nothing they can do. They can't stop us now. Wait, something else just came out that's going to help us do that. I forgot what it was. As if the P900 and the P1000 wasn't enough. There's something else that came out. I forgot what it was. But they're getting a hard way to go. Yes.
Where can they go from here? Like size-wise, how much further do you think of a camera can they create?
Oh, the lens?
Yes.
I think the P1000 actually shows where they're actually going. They refined it, okay? And again, I'm not saying this is crap now. I'm not saying that. But if you look at both of these, they took this very successful machine and refined it here, okay? And I think they're just going to keep refining it. I think that photography overall is going in this direction, in addition to a couple other directions. Bridge cameras are going to be more prominent now.
So we'll be able to see past the moon.
Past the moon?
Yeah.
Past the moon is the dome.
No, but technically, shouldn't we be seeing things further beyond the moon, even with this camera now?
Yeah, you can, because the digital zoom gives it even further. I think it's magnification of 4 times 3,000. So it's not the best picture at that point, but you can identify what you're seeing. Yes.
Yeah, have you taken any pictures of the so-called quote-unquote planets? I mean, we know they're wandering stars, but it's always been a fascination of mine to get it like an observatory and really get a look at what these things are. We know what NASA depicts. Have you got any pictures of these so-called planets?
I've shot Saturn, Jupiter, and what they call moons. They're little dots of light. You can't even see those things. Just little dots of light. I've shot Saturn with the rings.
So do they look like the pictures NASA depicts? Or
No, not at
they're
all.
more like the star where they're...
No, they look like discs, flat discs, kind of like what a kid would do when they cut it out with paper. That's basically what they look like.
So they are distinctly different from stars then?
Yes, they actually have shape. They aren't, they aren't doing that weird dance thing that they do, but they do have a specific shape. Saturn, I'm not convinced those are rings. I can see why someone would say they are, but I'm not convinced they're rings. I think it's a weird shaped thing up there, but I'm not convinced they're rings because there would be some type of separation in there. Now, when you see what NASA does, they hire people like me to do that. Okay, and I've been told you can make a lot of money with NASA. Actually, I could if I was willing to sell my soul. Yes, I could be a million. I could make a lot of money right now. But yeah, you can see what they call planets. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to take just a couple minute break before my presentation. We have some snacks and some water over here. If you need to wet your whistle, get a sweet tooth, there's bathrooms right out here. So just a couple of minutes and then I'll start back in. Appreciate Michael, awesome presentation. I love always having the questions as well. But we'll start up here in a couple minutes, give everybody a quick break.
Hey Michael,
Can you see me?
Google
I stand
search
here?
infrared
Why is
photography,
the camera high enough?
and it brings up photos of trees that looks like that there's snow covered,
Yes.
but they're all green. The green leaves doesn't look white.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Infrared is bizarre.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You should try looking at portraits in infrared.
Nate, did you want to answer those
It's
those
weird,
tough
man.
questions that came into the chat?
Oh. Well, there was one person that was saying nonsensical stuff. It was really strange. But
Hey.
the first person, if I understood right, was saying that I wasn't telling the truth about my firing.
Yeah, you actually didn't get fired you got fired for teaching
Give your name brand.
contrary doctrine that wasn't flattered.
Yeah, which is totally false because
Did you buy a man
by
for
the time of Take on the World, I had not taught
it's
any
affordable
teaching
and
that they could have
if
said
a part
was
goes bad on
false.
it,
The person made the statement that I was fired for Hebrew roots or Torah,
We just
which
recently went
is,
through that.
couldn't be further from the truth.
person
Now,
that took
the only way that would have played in was that the leadership of the church went to the Take on the World site. They could see the list of speakers and they could go to YouTube, which I'm sure they did, and they probably took stock of what some of the teachers taught. Some
You in
of
fact
those,
don't even know what was the whole reason.
no, because they were so basic. All they told me, and I've been consistent in my testimony since I got fired. Consistent in my interviews, consistent in my book, consistent on my live streams, meetups. And I find it interesting that you have people like a few people that jumped in the chat who have 0 subscribers. They might not even be using their real name, but they're not anyone that I
They're
registered.
claiming they're from the church, which is furthest from the church as well.
So if they are from the church, then they're using a fake name because the names that I've seen in the chat, I've never even heard of. But I find it interesting to tell them that it's been 16 months since I was fired. When have the leadership of the church ever tried to refute anything that I stated publicly? They won't for a couple of reasons, but one reason is because they can't. They know that what I shared about the meeting was true. What they told me was, A, we can't have a minister with that kind of association. They did not clarify. I asked them for clarification. They refused to engage. Secondly, they said, we can't have you in our pulpit Sunday. And I asked them why. I said, what's the concern? When have I ever taught anything falsely? They did not answer that question because the only answer they could have given was, Nate, you've never done that. You've always taught the Bible. Not that I've ever been perfect in my teaching, but I've always been conscientious, and my sermons were based on the Word. It wasn't the soapbox. It wasn't, this is the hour of sharing pictures from a family vacation and just ad-libbing. It was a serious Bible study every time. And so I find it interesting that, it's easy for people who weren't in that meeting to pop into a chat and make all kinds of statements. I'd like to address this statement. They said that I was lying that the church gave me. That's not true. I stated from the beginning that the church gave me 8 weeks of severance, which, if you're in my shoes, that's not very much. You have a family of 6. It actually was in my one-page agreement that if they ever were to fire me, they were to give me a month's notice minimum. They gave me 45 minutes notice that I was to go to a meeting. Wouldn't tell me what the meeting was about, and within the first 2 minutes of the meeting, I was told that I was fired. So they immediately broke their agreement with me, aside from the fact that I wasn't treated for fairness. But the severance was necessary, of course. I mean, if you have the rug pulled out from under you and you have a family of 6, after 7.5 years, I think 8 weeks of severance was the absolute minimum that I would have expected. And let's be honest, some of that severance was painful because they weren't loving or kind to me in that meeting. They weren't giving me those funds because they cared about my family. They were giving those funds because they realized that people were about to be upset by their actions.
So needless to say, the people that are just doing this are just either trolling you or they are trying to gather different information to have against you.
Or they're misinformed. And it's also interesting that none of these people who post stuff like that have ever reached out to me. They've never shown up in any of my chats where I'm live and I can address their live. So, you have to use discernment on that. But anyway, it happened.
Only live. Take on the world TV.
Yeah. More exclusive. All right.
There was like 6 of you guys out there earlier. So everybody's asking, why are those comments being deleted? Well,
there's
when
a
you
reason.
Start spreading lies that aren't rooted in truth.
Yeah.
But,
exactly.
They're going to get deleted.
So that's
Exactly. Okay, we're going to get started here in just a minute. Facebook's still going. Chris, can you see my head in the screen here? Is my head in the screen, or is it needs to go a little higher? Okay. We'll go a little higher.
PowerPoint?
No PowerPoint. Okay.
And Bowman's
How about now? Okay. All right. Whoever worked the lights on that last one, if we could get these front lights back, that would be great for me. And we'll get started here in just a minute with my presentation.
Awesome. The star of the show.
That might help. That'll help Facebook land as well with more lights. Okay. Now, you don't have to wait for a break to come get some snacks. If you want to get a snack while I'm up here yakking, knock yourself out. If you need to use the restroom, go do that.
Hey guys, they are donuts we did not approve.
Yes.
No judging, no judging.
We're not judging.
All right.
So before the trolls come out.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get rolling here. We still have time here, which is great. And I'm looking forward to our fellowship afterwards as well. But I gave a presentation in Dallas, Texas, FEIC2019, on the main stage. I was very excited to be able to give a main stage presentation because I wanted to share not only some important facts about the true biblical cosmology and creation, but there were some other spiritual things that I wanted to say to some of the people viewing, the live stream and people who were there in person.
And I had talked to Robbie beforehand, and I said, Robbie, just a general figure, how many, what would be the percentage of people, individuals that attend the Flat Earth International Conference that would not consider themselves a believer? They might consider themselves an atheist or agnostic, not really sure, or just kind of seeking, but they would not consider themselves a Bible believer, a follower, a Christian, etc. And he said probably around 30%. And I thought, well, 30%, that's a fairly large group of people. So for every 100 people that are there, you probably have 30 people or so who are either not sure or say that they don't have belief. And so I wanted to not just share some facts, which a lot of them would believe anyway about creation, but I wanted to give a spiritual component to it. And so I gave a little bit of a challenge at the end, not in a rude or aggressive way, but an honest, upfront, heartfelt challenge. I'm going to share a little bit about that as well. But since we do have time, I'll share some of what I presented at FEIC. A few of these things might just be a refresher from some of the other videos and things I've done. But my background is in a lot of things. I've done social work, did police work for a very short while, 1 year in Anchorage, Alaska. I've done wildland firefighting. I've been a cashier at a grocery store. I mean, I've done a lot of different things. And it's interesting because I view that as, a blessing that I've had various experience. I've done customer service, I've done all kinds of things. But other than my time out in the woods as a firefighter, most of everything I've done has dealt with people on a personal level. And customer service wasn't as much fun at times. Some of you understand why, because people can be great, but they can also be challenging. But, the last 26 years, I've had experience more specifically in ministry, which would be volunteer and also paid full-time ministry. I was fired from my congregation in 2018 for attending the Take on the World conference. And, in some ways that was very surprising and traumatic, but in other ways it was very freeing. And for that backup. And it wasn't until several weeks after I was fired when the reality of things set in, and my ministry and involvement in the truth community at large really became something active. And I started to see how the Father in heaven was using that experience to transition me, not away from ministry, and not even away from teaching the Bible, but some very specific things relating to Scripture, and basically opening the door for me to minister to people of all different walks of life, experiences in the community at large, which has been, I think, amazing, but it's been very necessary. And I could say a lot more about that, but it continues on. And every single day it seems that I'm reaching out to people, or people are reaching out to me, prayers and support and speaking opportunities, and sharing the gospel, and encouraging people who are feeling attacked for their beliefs and their convictions. So it's been a very freeing experience to kind of come out of some paradigms, and in some ways, I guess, a religious matrix that I didn't understand was there. But up to the present, my ministry has actually expanded. And, before I had an influence at a smaller congregation of 150-ish. It was about 200 when I started, and a lot of congregations have kind of lost people along the way the last several years. But now, it blows my mind even to this day. There are tens of thousands of people who have heard about my story, about my family. There are, hundreds of people every week that tune into what I'm doing, and are active in following my ministry and interacting with me on social media or in person, meetups like this. I've traveled to a lot of different places for meetups. A few months ago, I was down in Indiana, and so I'm meeting new people all the time. Conferences, of course, and I will be speaking the end of February at the Isaiah 46:10 conference down in Arkansas. That's otherwise known as the Declaring the End from the Beginning conference. Some of you may know about that. Some of you may have attended. Some of you will be attending. So I'm going to share mainly about some things that happened on the heels of Flat Earth, of biblical cosmology, spiritually speaking, biblically speaking, that had to do with understanding some things about the Father's truth that I didn't understand before. And this presentation isn't about that, but I'm not ashamed, and I make I'm not hiding anything about my faith, but, we do now keep the Sabbath, and we are practicing in many ways and looking and still studying things, matters of Torah and the commandments of God. Certainly I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that he is the Messiah, and that I have salvation only through him. I know full well I'm not saved by my works, but as James would say, I show you my faith by my works. And I'm also reminded in Ephesians that it says we were created in Messiah for good works, to do good works. So, a lot of times there's the works-based, faith-based salvation argument. And I'm not speaking on that today, but just to give my 2 cents is to say, sometimes we go to either extremes. And people who don't like what James said, which is inspired truth, will say, well, Paul said over here. And people who don't like what Paul said, which is inspired truth, will say, well, James said over here. What we have to understand is James was addressing a certain group of people who apparently believed that all they had to do is have faith, and they didn't really have to do anything. They didn't have to show their faith. So, of course, he's going to address them and say, faith without works is dead. It's meaningless. I'll show you my faith by my works. Paul was addressing a group of people who were the opposite. They were hey, I'm saved by my works. And he said, whoa, time out. We're not saved by works of righteousness. Okay, we're saved by faith. Are James and Paul in contradiction? Is the Apostle Paul and James, who was a leader in the body of Christ in Jerusalem, were they on the opposite teams? No. If you believe that the Bible is inspired and that these men spoke by inspiration of the Spirit, they were both sharing truth, but they were addressing different issues. So that's a freebie. I just threw that in there because we were talking about that this morning in a study group that I was in. But you can see I still have preaching at heart. I still have teaching. I still have ministry at heart. And becoming a flat earther, a biblical cosmology guy, really hasn't changed me that much. If I'm changed at all, I probably have more gray hairs. and I do have a little bit of a scruffy beard coming in. I'm giving the beard thing a try this winter, see how that goes. I've never grown a full beard before, so this is a work in progress. We'll see. If I come online sometime all clean shaven, then you'll say, okay, I guess the beard didn't work out. But I also shared at FEIC about persevering through challenges. That's part of life, and that's part of being believers, as being followers. Regardless of what topic you're addressing, we are to persevere in faith. We're to persevere in truth. We're to persevere even in challenges. And I do want to share a couple of things from my notes from FEIC. I started out comparing what so-called science says versus what the Bible says. And if you've heard me speak before, some of this will be repeated information. But there's a huge difference. And even 16 months after being fired and 2.5 years, into coming into these truths about biblical cosmology, there's some things in Scripture that still blow my mind. And I'm just like, wow, this couldn't be more opposite from what so-called science declares as fact. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of those, and then I'll share some of the spiritual stuff from my presentation. But it's almost like science is like the Simon Says game, as I've said before. You do this and you do that, but if Simon doesn't say, Simon didn't say wiggle your left foot, so you're out. And science does the same thing. They say, well, time out. We didn't say that you could, do research. We didn't say that you could conduct experiments. We didn't say you could start a YouTube channel and share, empirical evidence or science. And so, it's the select few, not just in the white lab coats, but it's the personalities like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye.
So it's quite interesting. But quickly, science says a few things, and I do want to say I'm not against true science. I'm against scientism, okay, which is a worship of a false paradigm of science. It's the exaltation of man and his knowledge, and it is the rejection of the Father's commands and of the Father's knowledge and his creation, and things that the Scripture says are clearly seen. Clearly seen. You don't have to have a doctorate. You don't have to have a lab coat to understand these things that are clearly seen. I'm against theoretical science or unproven science that is taught as fact. And let's be honest, most of us in this room, even some of us middle-agers, when we were kids, even the oldest person in this room has been taught theory as fact since we were eyeballing that globe in our kindergarten classroom. So I'm against those things. But science says the universe, including the earth, came from a big bang explosion, that nothing exploded and created everything. And I didn't come up with that. Other speakers came up with that, but that never gets old. Nothing exploded and created everything. They say that the sun is at the center of what's called a solar system, and everything else revolves around that. It's the heliocentric model. It's the Copernican model. But let's be honest. Let's pull that mask off and let's call it out. What is it? It is sun god worship. Okay? It is the worship of Satan, who manifests in many different forms, and sometimes even as a messenger of light or truth. But it's all part of that system. Science says that the planets revolve around the sun, and that Earth is a planet. You remember the sitcom that came out, was it in the 90s? It's a while ago. Third Rock from the Sun, okay? All right, kind of a goofy show. Some good laughs there. Science says that the universe is ever expanding and infinite, okay? And if God does exist, of course now they say he doesn't, but if he did exist, he's at the edge of some, ever expanding galaxy in some dimension that we can't really define. Now, one thing that I think is quite telling is that even, some of these guys like Richard Dawkins and some of these guys who are like the poster child, the front runners for, Darwinism movement and atheism, they're now coming, I wouldn't say full circle, but they're now admitting that the universe shows design and shows some kind of creator, but they won't say it's God. In fact, they'll say it's not God. But yeah, there's obviously some kind of design now, or designer. But we know what they're pushing. Why are they coming around saying that now? Because they're wanting to push the whole alien seed, deception. Okay. Have you seen, what's the name of that show, Expelled? The documentary with Ben Stein. Have you seen that, Expelled? I think that's the correct name of it. Really good. And he grills Richard Dawkins in an interview several years ago. And he asks him about that. And he finally corners Richard Dawkins and he's like, well, who created this? And then he'll say, well, we don't know, but we know the sort of event that it must have been. But then he says, well, okay, well, tell me about that event. Well, we don't know. But we know that it could have been this, it should have been that. And Ben Stein, he outwitted, I'm just going to say it, he outwitted that dude. I mean, Ben Stein is a genius. And it was just like watching a chess match. But even Dawkins came down to say, we don't know exactly. These are the guys that are telling us this is the truth. These are the undisputed facts. These are more than theories. Man, we got to take stock of that. So science says mankind is nothing special. We're just created from exploding stardust, We're common. We evolved from slime, and then we became a monkey, and then we, on so on and so forth, or seeded from aliens and doomed to fail, right? Most of the alien movies anyway, what if the aliens are our creator? Like, have you seen the alien series movie called Prometheus? What are the aliens doing the whole time? Hundreds of years ago, they tried to wipe us out, and that didn't work. So what do? They come back, and now they're trying to wipe us out with alien technology. You know, how's that? That's horrible. Science says that the sun was formed 4.6 billion years ago from a giant rotating cloud of dust and gas. They say it's over 100 times the diameter of the Earth. That 1 million Earths could fit inside the sun. That is 93 million miles away. Now, think about this. If you have we know the Bible says that the sun and the moon are what? They are lights, okay? Now, they're also for other things, right? For the Father's calendar and events, signs, seasons, moed, days, and years. But if you look at the thing that is repeated most often, it says lights, 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 lights. Lights in the firmament to give light to whom? Mankind on earth, okay? If you could boil those things down to the simplest form, they're giant light bulbs in the sky. Now, how many light bulbs have you purchased to light an object that was 100 times bigger than the object that you were lighting? I'll just use my house as an example. I've got some ceiling fans and other light bulbs and lamps. I don't need something hundreds and hundreds and millions of times bigger to light this object. If you look at almost every case, it's a much, much smaller light that can easily illuminate a larger surface, a larger area. I believe, and I don't know exactly how big the sun and moon are. Some people say they're 30 miles across. I don't know. But I don't believe that the sun, could fit 1 million Earths in it. In fact, I think the proper question should be, how many suns could fit on the face of the Earth? And when you start looking at the path of some of the latest, eclipses, right? And some people are saying there was this 70-mile wide swath that was painted across the United States just a few summers ago. 93 million miles away. And it's interesting how their math is always stretched out to prove their point, right? And Michael Solomon has said this many times before in his presentations, all you need is more time or more distance. Eventually, you can come up with some math to support your piece of evidence. Let's see. Oh, here's some funny ones. And this is all stuff I took from science websites. If you want those details, I can give them to you. Several different, some like berkeley.edu, okay, very prestigious Californian university. Some, kids science websites. But it says that the sun rotates on its axis every 26 days. That different parts of the sun rotate at different speeds. Like, there's some wonky stuff that I found out. Spacecraft are observing the sun right now. And it's heating up, and didn't you know in 5 billion years it will kill all life on Earth? How could you even know that? Okay. And how could you know that it was created 4.6 billion years ago? I mean, who was the first scientist? I don't even know officially in that category, but it couldn't be more than 1,000 years, 1,500 years, 2,000 years. So, but they were there 4.6 billion years ago, and they got it on video. The science says that the moon was formed 30 to 50 million years after the sun or solar system. Think about that for a moment. Science says millions of years apart from the sun and the moon. What does Genesis chapter 1 in the scriptures say? Same day. Sun and moon created on the same day. Somebody's lying here. And you know what? If you don't believe in this book as the inspired word, that's your choice. That's your responsibility to discern this and to study it out and to consider it. But I'm going to follow what the creator of the universe said. And when I see science, so-called science, consistently having opposite or crazy way off information from what the Bible says, I'm going to take what the Bible says every time, because I take God at his word. I take the Father at his word. It says that it's 238,000 miles away from the earth. Man, those P900s are pretty amazing, right? I mean, you can bring that stuff in, man. It says it's the quarter the size of the earth. And of course it says, this is, I won't say it's my favorite argument, because it drives me crazy. But I have some friends that are awesome enough. They're not convinced flat earthers, but they're awesome enough to dialogue with me. We've talked about it. And one of their favorite arguments to use is that, well, the sun is just, or the moon is just reflecting the light of the sun. Well, that's been debunked with simple thermal, thermometers and all kinds of things. But yeah, because, rocks reflect things, right? Yeah. Especially gray rocks. Right. Okay. Now, I don't believe the moon is a gray rock, but I'm saying I'm just using what they say. I mean, that's their own proven science, right? It takes hundreds of thousands of moons to equal the brightness of the sun. Now, I'm sure we're all in agreement. The sun is many times brighter than the moon. How many times? I don't know, 5, 10, 25 times. It's definitely the greater of the two great lights. But Scripture in Genesis 1 says the sun and the moon are great lights. It's not, the sun is this amazingly brilliant great light, and the moon is its gray rock reflector. That's not what it says. You can't, and I don't care if you're a Bible believer, you cannot get that from Scripture. And if you can't get it from Scripture, you better check yourself, right? Because you are lying against the truth of God's Word. And I don't mean anything rude by that, but that's what I'm convinced of. It says it has a mountain. Did you know this? That the moon has a mountain on it that's just over half the height of Mount Everest? According to science. If that's true, think about that.
Did they take a picture
If the
of
moon,
it?
exactly, where is this evidence? If the moon is a quarter the size of the Earth, and it has a mountain that's half the height of Mount Everest, don't you think that would be a standout feature? That any guy with take a 10-year-old digital camera, with a 3x zoom. I mean, you had to be able to see that. Oh my goodness. Its gravity causes the Earth's tides. This kills me because the moon is 238,000 miles away. But it's close enough to affect our tides because its gravity is so strong. And yet, by science's own numbers about gravity, the Earth being 4 times larger than the moon, if the moon is close enough to affect the Earth, wouldn't the gravity of the Earth pull that moon in? I mean, by science's own exclamation. Right. Yeah, it will.
It doesn't affect lakes.
It doesn't affect large lakes that are bigger than some of the seas, right? Yeah. Well, large lake seas. But I think there's something else going on there. And there's all kinds of theories on that. But I definitely know what it's not. Okay? Yeah. I do not believe that the moon is doing that. Now, there may be something to magnetism and other things in the Earth itself, okay, but we'll leave it at that. Science regarding the stars says that stars are suns, and suns are stars, and suns and stars have their own system, right? They say that the smallest star is way bigger than our sun, Everything is like billions and trillions and multiple times bigger. And the closest one is, if I got this correct, 4.2 trillion light years away. Not just miles, trillion light years. And I'm not the math guy, but when you do the math on what a trillion light years, you can't even hardly fathom it. But in other words, science says that it takes light itself more than 4 years to complete the journey from Earth to the closest star in our system. If you tried to hitch a ride on the fastest spacecraft ever launched from Earth, it still should take you more than 70,000 years to get there. This is a great quote. Traveling between the stars just isn't feasible right now. So science says, there you have it, folks. Now, I've already shared some of the main highlights from Scripture, and I'm a stickler on this. There's hundreds of scriptures that I believe are biblical cosmology related, okay? But you don't need hundreds of scriptures if a person is really willing to take a look at the Word. Because all you need is Genesis chapter 1. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. There's nothing new, okay, in its foundation outside of Genesis 1 that you're going to find in anything else in Scripture. Now, there may be some expanded detail. In Genesis chapter 1, you have the earth, you have the sun, moon, and stars. pretty simple. Now, elsewhere, you have more information about the stars. You have information about the Mazzaroth, the constellations, right? But you're not going to find anything, any new discovery, anything, specifically created outside of Genesis 1. It's all in Genesis 1 and the first few verses of Genesis 2. Again, to me, the smoking gun, there was a lot of convincing information for me regarding, biblical cosmology. But the thing that sealed the deal for me, I could not get past that Genesis chapter 1 describes the earth, okay, the seas being gathered together into one place, and the land, the earth, the Eretz appeared, okay? Day 3, day 4, the next day, sun, moon, and stars. It hit me right between the eyeballs, and I was just blown away. I'm like, whoa. Sun, moon, and stars were not even created until after the earth was created, until after the land appeared. That's huge. How can you get past that? But here's something else to consider. Genesis chapter 2. Let's go back to Genesis 1:31. And God, Elohim or Yahuwah, saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was good. So the Creator looks at everything that he had made. That's a significant statement. It means that everything had already been created at this point. Genesis 1, verse 31, everything was done. It says, behold, it was very good, and the evening and the morning were the 6th day. Now, chapter 2, verse 1 and 2 is amazing. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, completed, okay? Finished. Now, is there anything left out in the phrase heavens and earth? Means all of creation and everything in it, whether in the firmament or on the face of the earth or flying around in the air or in the seas, all of it, all of those things were created. And it says, so again, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. So, sorry, no black holes popped out, okay, on day 7 or day 8 or day 10 or a billion years ago or whatever you want to call it. Everything was completed. This is a bookend verse. This is this is completed. Just like when the Messiah said, it is finished, okay? He was done with the work that he came to do as far as creating a way for us to have atonement for our sin. There wasn't anything needed after that as far as the Messiah was concerned. So I say, sometimes with folks, obviously they get triggered. This is an emotional subject. It drives people crazy. Some people don't even want to go there. They pretend this topic doesn't even exist. But I always say, if you can lovingly and gently try to bring someone just to the first chapter of the Bible. I like this phrase, okay, because it's gentle, it's kind, and it's honest. Would you be willing to simply look at some things in Genesis chapter 1 with me sometime? Would you be? Are you asking a hard thing? Genesis chapter 1. If you're a Bible believer, would you be willing to look at the first chapter of the Bible, which you've done hundreds and maybe thousands of times? But if there's even a 1% chance that what I'm saying is true, that God has a different story, that the Creator does, a Bible believer should be willing to say, yes, I am willing to look and see not what does Nate say, not what the people at the Flat Earth Meetup believe, but what does the Creator say in His Word? It's not my word. It's not your word. It's His Word. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, I was going to say, Complete Jewish Bible is my favorite translation when sitting down with another brother or sister, because the way it's depicted there, you can't deny
some translations I think do a much better job of fleshing out the original meanings. And I would encourage people, you don't have to be a Bible scholar. I don't even consider myself a Bible scholar, even though I have a bachelor's, I have a master's, I have 27 years of study. But you can get some simple programs, such as the Blue Letter Bible, a Bible Gateway. You can get eSword. Is anybody familiar with eSword? They've been rocking eSword for a long time. But there's a lot of free stuff that you can do, and you can just look up some of the simple wording. And that point brings me to what I want to share, which was the the spiritual side of this presentation that I gave, I challenge people who are non-believers in the Word, who are not followers of the Messiah, the Son of God. I challenge them at this event to say, most of you have spent hundreds, if not thousands, maybe tens of thousands of hours over 4 to 5 years potentially, exploring, science and evidence relating, investigating, relating the true nature of cosmology, of creation. And I shared with them, a scripture from Jeremiah, which Jeremiah 29:13 says, "You shall seek me and shall find me." This is the Father speaking. And this is the stipulation. When you seek me with your whole heart, which really means your whole being, okay? With the deepest, most important part of you. And that's a promise. I believe that this promise is true. I don't believe that he's a liar, okay? Scripture says one thing he cannot do is lie. He can also not be tempted by sin. But he does not lie. And so this was a promise, this was a gift that the Father was giving to people at FEIC, those who weren't believers, to say, look, I'm promising you that if you seek me with all of your heart, you will find me. It's not, you might find me, there's a chance that you could possibly maybe find me, but he says you will discover me. You will come to know me. You will come to understand. And so I shared that scripture and I said, here's the challenge. I'm not saying, because I know there are some atheists and agnostics that have done some deep thinking about God. They've done some search and some study, even in the scriptures. But my question to them was, did you really do that search with your whole being? Did you do it with even half of the vigor and energy and time and money spent that you did trying to understand this biblical cosmology flat earth thing? Because let's be honest, most of these folks, they went their whole heart and mind into this discussion, this study over months or years. And so that's what I put to the listener, was to say, be honest with yourself. If you haven't done that, there's a reason why you haven't been able to take hold of this promise. And this is a promise from your Creator. He wants to be known. He wants to be known, and he wants you to make him known to others. So that's the second part. It's not like, oh, I got to the end of my search and I opened the door and there was the Creator. No, he wants you to know him and discover him, but then he wants you to share himself with others. He wants you to share with others. So this is a lifelong adventure. It's a lifelong commitment. It's a lifelong discovery. And so I shared that with them. And there was a particular word in the scriptures that it took almost a whole year coming full circle that I shared at FEIC. And I want to share this with you guys. Some of you have heard this. Apologize if it's repeat information. But when I spoke with Chad Taylor at Take On the World, down in the basement of the lodge, there was a lot of biblical cosmology stuff going on down there. And I listened to one of Chad's lessons. And I approached him afterwards, and we kind of hit it off, and I told him, I'm seeking, I'm trying to figure this out. He prayed for me, which I really appreciated. And eventually we got discussing these things, and I took his book home, Where Are We? Earth According to the Bible. I took that book, and I studied, and I was heavy into Genesis 1 for the first week or two before I got fired. I was actually doing a deep dive into Genesis 1. And I noticed that in Genesis 1:17, where it says he set where he set the sun, moon, and stars in the firmament to give light. That word "set" is interesting to me because phonetically it is my name. It is the word Nathan. Okay, you can look that word up. That is Strong's number. If you're into the Strongs, okay, here's your Strong's number. Check it out for yourself. H5414. H5414. It's Nathan. It kind of sounds like Nawthan. Well, my name is Nathan. Most people know me as Nate, but my birth name is Nathan. And I also understood that the word Nathan or Nathanael means, as well as Scripture, a gift of God or given by God. And so King James uses the word set, but when you look at this word Nathan in Genesis chapter 1, verse 17, it literally can also mean that the Creator gifted man by setting these lights in his firmament. He gifted those. And Genesis 1 tells us that. He gifted us with light. He gifted us with, the seasons, the Moedim, the days, and the years. I mean, that was a gift that he gave us. And then we were driving home this fall we went to the one-day Sukkot fellowship out in the boondocks. It was awesome. And it was dark by the time we were driving home. And it just kind of hit me. I was like, Ecclesiastes 3:11, where it says he has set eternity. Some versions use world or cosmos or whatever, but he has set eternity in their hearts, meaning mankind. And I'm like, I wonder if that's the same word from Genesis 1:17, where it says he set the sun, moon, and stars in the firmament for man. I'm like, I turned to my wife because I'm driving, and I think we got to about Oak Harbor or someplace on Highway 2, and I'm like, hey, Jen, can you look this up? And so I said, check this out. I want to know what this word is in the Strong's. And she kind of showed me this. Is this your word? And I was blown away. It's that same word. It's Nathan, okay? So what is the Creator saying? He's saying, I gifted the sun, moon, and stars to mankind in the physical creation, but then you, as my special creation, the most special creation out of everything that was made, I gifted in your innermost being a desire to seek me, to know me. And doesn't that answer the question, why do so many people who don't have belief, why do they have this burning desire to know truth? Whatever the truth is, they have a burning desire. That is because the Father, the Creator, put that in your innermost being. So I was blown away. I thought, man, this is so cool. And of course, the word Nathan has been around before the guy Nathan Wolfe has been around. I know that wasn't put in there just for me, but I do know that it was put in there for me because I got something cool out of it, and it was super encouraging. And so I'm like, okay, so the Creator also put this Nathan, inserted him into this discussion about the firmament, and wild and crazy things have happened since that time. But isn't that cool? And think about this too. I want to end with this. There's another gift that the Father sent. We know him as the Son of God, right? The Messiah, okay? And when you think about it, what did Messiah say he was? He said, I am what? The light of the world. Mind blown, okay? So the Father didn't just gift us these luminaries, the sun, moon, and the stars. He didn't just gift us inside our innermost being a desire to seek him, to know him, to reach out to him, and to come into a relationship with him, but he specifically gifted his own Son to do that for us. And the Son is the true light that came into the world. Now, the scripture says the darkness does not understand it or comprehend it. Why is that? Because the darkness is of the flesh. It's of the earthly. It's of the base things of this world. It's not of the Spirit. And so I think part of this promise from Jeremiah 29, you shall seek me and you shall find me when you seek me with all your heart. There's a spiritual component to that. And you have to renew your heart to be able to really to seek and to know God. And there's scriptures about that. Romans chapter 12, the first couple verses, we renew our minds. How do we renew our minds? Ultimately, we renew our minds through the Word, right? And when we renew our minds through the Word, what is connected to our minds? Well, this thing we call our heart. I'm not talking about this physical muscle that's beating and keeping me alive right now, but the Hebrews had all kinds of illustrations for that, and even sometimes they would call it the gut area, So we have physical gut health, right? Or not. We also have spiritual gut health, right? The innermost part of our being is known and illustrated as our heart or our gut, okay? It's what affects our entire life. And so we have to renew our minds through Scripture, ultimately, because God does exist, and he explains himself through his written word, and he also explained and showed himself through the Word, right? the Logos, okay? Jesus Christ, the Messiah. So, man, I'm preaching on here. This is exciting stuff. But I just wanted to share those things, some of those highlights, and I added some new stuff in there as well that just came to mind from my presentation at FEIC. And I've always told people, you know, I'll do what I can to, you know, reach out to me. I try to answer questions. I try to answer emails. You know, after 16 months of people hearing my story and having association and fellowship with people, it is getting harder, and sometimes people do fall through the cracks. You know, I miss something you sent me on Messenger, or I miss an email. Please know it's not intentional. You know, unless you're a big fat jerk, then I might just be ignoring your big fat jerky question, you know, which doesn't have a ring of truth or honesty or love in it. But generally speaking, I try to answer every message if I can. And so if I forget something, or if I miss something important, if I haven't responded, please send me a duplicate. Say, hey, Nate, you know, on Facebook, they got the little hand wavy thing. In Messenger, if you're on Messenger, say, hey, don't forget, I asked you, you know, 3 months ago about blah, blah, blah. Oh, sorry, you know. And I can only imagine, you know, guys like Robbie Davidson, Rob Skiba, and others like that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers and followers. You know, I have a couple thousand, you know, which is amazing. But, you know, give those guys some grace, because I know how busy I am right now. I can't imagine having that many people potentially, okay, reaching out to you on a daily basis. I can understand why some messages go unanswered. But I hope this is encouraging to you guys. We still have some time. I want to turn the rest of the time over to Chris and or Liz. You know, you guys can divvy that up however you see fit. And we have till about 4-ish, 4:15 I think at the latest, and we'll need to clear out of here. So whatever time we have left after Chris shares will just be some free fellowship here. Then this is a problem, but also a cool problem to have. We have like 16, 17 people who reserve for the meal. So I called the restaurant. They do have the center area. They do believe they can have it free. They don't think they can have it free till 4:30. So we might have to leave here and wait about 15 minutes or so and then go to the restaurant. But I think I have a spot for all of us to fellowship at. And so anyway, okay, so another quick little break. And when Chris is ready, he can do his thing. Well, thank you guys so much.
So we have this room until 4.
I think it's at least 4. It might be like 4:15.
Okay.
Jennifer had to leave to take Hannah to close the
The resources you mentioned, is it called resource?
What's that?
Resources you mentioned?
E-sword.
E-sword.
Like E-sword, like electronic sword.
SWR.
It's the sword of the Lord with an electronic edge. So that's their slogan. So if you just look up E-sword, it's a free resource that you can download, and most of the basic Bible study software is free with that. So
Is it more of a
you can get it as an app on some of the devices. I mainly use it on my laptop.
Did e-sword pop up
No.
on your phone?
You get an
I was
advertisement.
not even looking at anything. It says the science concept of the Bible just popped up on my phone.
Nice. Yes, yes.
I have found that to be true.
You know, you had a thing about a 747, showing after 747, this is not scientific, this is headed to the future.
Nice.
That they did.
Well, I'm still waiting for the dude with Virgin Allied or whatever, you know. Some people, they've had their moon tickets purchased for since 2004.
That's so weird. Do you know Congress just passed a thing about the new space, space cars?
Yeah.
Like it literally passed last year.
Was it hidden in some other thing?
I don't know. I was listening to NPR. And
Is it warm in here? Or is it just me?
Just you.
Always hot.
Don't you just like,
It's nice.
I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to do it,
You
but I
like
just
that?
roll my eyes and
I actually wanted to
When people
color. I wanna
Yeah, but I just got done.
Should we start?
Yeah, if we're ready, okay, we're gonna get started with Chris Bailey.
Okay, guys. If DR in the back can, if DR in the back can settle down. He didn't even hear me. If the gentleman in the back can settle down. So hey guys, I'm gonna do something a little different. I don't know if you guys knew that me and Liz, we used to sell air purification technology.
Ooh.
Anybody in this room know that?
What is it?
Oh, Michael knew that. Oh, that's only because I just told you. Who saw Michael Solomon's presentation at FEIC? At Flat Earth International Conference? Nobody in this room saw it? You saw a little bit? Liz, you saw it? You were there. Maria doesn't even count. Nobody else in the room saw Michael Solomon presentation. So that means you didn't see my presentation, which is great. Because we spoke together.
Nice.
Yeah, I did see it.
Okay, then you don't count. Okay. But so I sold air purification, so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what's inside this air right now. So every little block segment of air, there could be thousands of little particles of germs, bacteria, viruses. They're all over the counter. It's actually really gross and disgusting. I could really gross you guys out if I really wanted to.
I work at a hospital.
Yeah. Well, that is even worse. But our technology that we sold worked extremely well in there. We sold technology that was active purification. And so, who's familiar with a passive filter? Who has a filter on their furnace? Everybody? Okay. So how that works is, or a Honeywell system. Have you ever heard of a system like that? What that requires is, or the sharper images, those are really popular. The air would circulate into them, and so the germs and the viruses, the dust particles, the dust mites, the dander, all that would get stuck inside of the filter. So it meant it had to take that filter and put it inside of it, right? So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about active purification. Before I do that, what is the biggest thing that comes flying in our face when we start talking about this crazy topic called flat Earth? What would you guys think? I mean, this is chemtrails. No, what is the what is the thing
Gravity.
our detractors tell us that we know absolutely nothing? Who said that?
Gravity.
Gravity. Awesome. So I'm going to be talking about what I think actually destroys gravity. So, and I believe we had this secret all along and I didn't even know. And so, I just told you what passive does. Active purification, so we still sell these if you guys need one. Active purification actually goes out like a little Pac-Man and seeks these things out and drops them in the air or just destroys them. So those are things like ionization, ozone, activated oxygen, all these things that God created in the atmosphere go and destroy these things. So you can buy machines that create that same technology outdoors and bring them indoors, and you can actually do that. So every block segment of air. So how long do you guys think a virus or a bacteria or a dust mite can last in the air? So right here, if I just breathe that in, I just breathe. I breathe the whole time. So how long do you guys think a virus or bacteria or dust mite can last in the air?
Days, months.
Days, months? Well, if you Google it right now, everybody can Google if you're watching. So Google's going to tell you about 5 days. What we discovered, especially the viruses, bacteria, they can last weeks in air, depending on the size. But they're all made up of matter, right? And so we have this thing, it's called the living proof, and I want to show you guys this. I'm going to plug this back in. And as I explain this, so guys, this is my rough draft. You guys are getting a rough draft of a future Flat Out Insights episode where we're going to be doing this. Yeah, there you go, Michael. There we go. I sort of know what I'm doing.
And the other one. The other one. That one.
Perfect. That's good. So what this is a little box here. This is called the living proof. And inside of this box, there are no fans, there's no filters, there's what is called here is, you can see it, this box is blocking it, but right there, that is what is called the needlepoint ionizer. This is the ion antenna. So when this turns on, it sends out specific ions with an ion antenna, which then the ionization attaches to any particulate in the air. So let's think about that for a second. Gravity is a force. I'm going to do something like this, right? Well, not the cups, because you can reuse that. So we all know gravity. We can do the Neil deGrasse Tyson, gravity, drop the mic, right? So we all would say buoyancy and density, correct? Correct, everybody agree?
Yeah.
So, okay. So you know, here it is. It's, there it goes. Because I may need it again. So those things like dust mites, they are floating throughout the air unaffected by gravity. Gravity is this force pulling everything down, right? I'm going to show you guys this demonstration. I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this. This is a 30-second demonstration. What me and you, Liz, would do at every trade show across Ohio for many, many years. We've done this time again, over and over and over again. And I believe this demonstration truly shows us how gravity is not what they even say it is. So let me go ahead and play this. So what is happening here is nothing because it hasn't played yet. There it goes. So what we do inside of there, there's a little smoke reservoir. We put a little droplet of smoke oil on there. That heating element heats that up and smoke starts to fill up this box. So this would represent the dust particles in the air. Who has a nice super clean house? Anybody have a really dirty house?
Define super clean.
Okay, so you get done, you just clean the house, and then the sun comes through the window, and you got that nice sunbeam coming through, and you look through it, and have you ever seen those particulates just floating through the air?
Yeah.
Man, I can't get rid of this stuff, right? Well, this technology actually drops all that particulate. That particulate just stays there, just there constantly, right? So this is what would occur and what would happen. We'd fill this box up, and let's watch that again. Okay. You guys should have said, wow, that's what we always did at trade shows. We always made you guys say, wow. What? The vacuum was not in that box. I don't know why this is doing
That's what it looked like. It looked like it was being vacuumed.
Yes, right? So let's turn this back on. This is the smoke filling this up. The minute, the very second that that ionization is turned on, he just flicks it on. Ready? Here it goes.
Wow.
There we go. Again, the inside here, there is no fans, there is no filters, there is no vacuums. All it did was turn on the ionization, the same thing that is outside, immediately drops all that particulate. So what happens outside is there isn't a magical force knocking all that stuff down, just like chemtrails. There's all these chemtrails up there, right? Well, you know, that stuff takes time, it drops. Gravity, that stuff is made of matter. That would be pulling on that equally, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
I believe our air quality proves, because our dust, it should be falling constantly. Everything should be falling constantly, but it doesn't. It actually requires, especially indoors. So they would say indoors, gravity doesn't exist indoors. So we must open up a window, allow ionization to come in, which drops our particulate. So this is, and I'm going to perfect this a little bit better, but I'm going to show it to you guys one more time. And hopefully have you, for all the audience that's watching on YouTube, you guys can say wow one more time. And so this is filling it up. That is the ionization, turning that on. And we actually could do this throughout a whole entire house with this technology. This technology is so strong that we have customers who have used this and placed the machine, it's only about the size of a bread box, in the corner of a home, and it will drop particulate in the backyard. grass, all sorts of that kind of dander. When they're cutting the grass, they had severe allergies. They could cut the backyard grass, they couldn't cut the front yard grass. They determined that this was at SeaWorld for those smoke machines that they use for all their shows. They have huge machines that are as big as this table. And how do they get all that smoke to completely drop instantaneously? They turn that on outside, and all that smoke just dissipates instantaneously. So I believe this actually proves viruses, bacteria, dust mites, all these things prove because of how they exist in our atmosphere, in our air, when there is a force that is to be pulling this down, it just simply doesn't exist. So this was something that I thought was pretty cool. I just want to show you guys that. So, wow, you guys can say wow. So,
We're
that-
stunned in silence.
yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, for most people that don't understand it, the technology, I think it totally proves all those things. And then I just want to close with this. So Jesse, you already saw this, unless if you didn't watch the whole thing, which is cool. Why does this topic even matter? Michael's gonna help me. So why does this topic matter? What do you guys think? Anybody have a clue why does it matter? I could start. Let's start with DR in the back. I'm just picking on you. Why do you think this topic matters?
The gravity topic?
Just flat Earth. Why do you think
flat
flat
Earth?
Yeah. Why do you think flat Earth?
Who's the creator?
Yeah.
It knows the creator.
I think it exposes the extent of the lies that are available out there to discredit the creator and also to mislead the people on the planet.
Awesome. Let's go with Maria. Why do you think this topic matters?
I think knowing the truth is always important. And if it's true, then I wanna know.
Yeah. Anybody in the front row? I'm not gonna pick anyone. Go ahead.
I think it can be a salvation issue because my daughter, although she doesn't believe what I believe yet, she accepts a creator now. And it's one step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because if this is all it is, there had to be someone who created it. That's what she finally accepted.
Nice.
Anybody else?
Well, I was just gonna say, we are more than we think we are, and it's all real. I mean, there's a noble thing on man, and there's a creator. It just changes everything. It levels the playing field is what it does.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
It's a paradigm shift, and once you've seen certain things, you can't unsee them, you can't unknow them.
There is no more boogeyman. It's all a lie.
Yeah.
Brings them closer to you.
No doubt. Anybody else? I mean, see, here's the thing. Every answer you guys said is true, right? I mean, I would say as a whole, in the flat Earth community, we ended up saying, or biblical cosmology, however we want to say it. Everybody would say they're hiding. From a secular standpoint, they would say they're hiding more land, right? That was pretty much what we get. We're all, outside of our door said biblical cosmology meetup. That's why Nate can get this place without saying flat Earth. So that's your tip. If you guys are trying to plan a meetup,
And it's a public.
speak a little
library.
louder.
Speak
Okay.
louder.
All right. So
Use your outside voice.
My outside voice. I'm just further back, I think. Maybe if I was closer, but then YouTube would get all my flaws. But so you guys can hear me fine. So I'm not even speaking to you, YouTube crowd. Yeah, Take on the World TV. Thank you guys. Where was I? I forget. Thank you.
What is the
All
importance
Planning
of
a
the flat
meetup.
Earth?
Yes, if you're planning a meetup, that's what you do. You just put biblical cosmology on the outside door, and then you can skate through. So that's a little tip.
And if you're at a public library and they have public rooms posted for use, they're going to be hard pressed to not allow you to come because your tax dollars pay for your local public library in some way, shape, or form. So if it ever comes down to that, you can challenge them on that. This is not a private facility.
So we would always say why this, have you guys seen Admiral Byrd talk about more land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody's seen that, right? So from a secular standpoint,
Would you like a donut?
would I like a donut?
He gives me a lot of heartache about the donuts, so I had to.
You could just put them right here. To be honest, I'm not tempted. So I'm not tempted. Yeah, I mean, me and Steve, we're good, man. We're good. Even though Liz was having, even though Liz had.
Flat.
Yeah, that's about that.
Both.
That could be like the sun. That could be the shape of the earth.
You're installing your temple.
Sorry, Chris.
Yes. Let's talk about the spiritual nature of the clean and unclean. That's another day. But from so if you guys haven't seen that, on YouTube, that is, one thing that we always hear: more land, those China maps with the extra, land potentially out there. But the biggest one we always get, from a biblical standpoint, that they're hiding the Creator, they're hiding God, right? And so this is how we ended our presentation, and which I absolutely do believe that they are hiding God. But that is no mystery. They've been hiding God for a long time. And give a big shout out to Michael. This is beautiful work. This is some of his work that he does.
Nice.
This is pretty awesome. And I'm going to pretend I'm doing our presentation. This is what happened. Wow, it actually works. Michael, wow. Look at that.
Yeah.
Of course I have. I
have to let this run through because we never get to show this.
No.
This is how every Flat Out Insights is supposed to start. And we tried to do this live at the Flat Earth International Conference, and that still didn't work. But it happened here today in Toledo. So super cool. So I'm going to thumb through. This was our presentation. So go and watch this. This is on our channel, Take on the World TV. You can go check that out. Don't watch it anywhere else. And look, all of our animations work. How
Yeah, wow. Good grief.
And I don't even need Maria up here. But I'm going to scroll through. So it was actually a really fun presentation to do live. We had super technical issues, of course. So you guys,
Wow, even that
Oh,
works.
wow.
yeah,
Wow.
this works. So we had a really fun time doing this. And sorry, this would have taken an hour to do, which I don't have. And so we covered a lot of details in this.
Nice.
But let's be clear, and this is how Michael did his. I'm going to get through to my slides. I'm sorry about this. This was also very fascinating as well. Beautiful animations, by the way. Maria did 90% of this, even all my parts. While I stayed
At
up.
like 1 in the morning?
Yeah.
Okay. Like I told you, we covered a ton of stuff in this.
Wow.
Alright.
What, they gave you 3 hours to present?
They talked really fast.
Yeah.
They talked
Like
way
chipmunks?
too fast.
Yeah, they did a really good job.
Mm.
And wow. And I know Michael's still got some inputs coming up here. Okay, I just got to get to the ending. Again, Take on the World TV is where you guys can go see this. Don't go watch it anywhere else. Man, Michael, all the animations were. This is great.
Yeah.
We should have just done this today.
Yeah.
It would have taken 3 hours to do it right.
We'll come back next time and you can have all 3
Okay.
hours.
So all those are correct. So I would say absolutely, they've been hiding God through evolution, through Big Bang. They've been purposely hiding a creator for a long time, like that Ben Stein. When you look at all of those things, Richard Dawkins, the atheist movement, all these things, they've been hiding this. But I'm going to take it back to where, if you guys have a Bible or anything, we can take it right back to Genesis 1:14. And this is what I think they're really trying to do. Yes, they're hiding God, no doubt about it, but I believe it's a little deeper than that. And I think this is the key to understanding a little bit more. So if we look at Genesis 1:14, and for a lot of you guys know exactly where I'm going with this. And for those of you who have seen it, Jesse, you've kind of already seen this. So it says, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from night and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. As Nate mentioned earlier, he talked about the Moedim, and that is the word that we see here that I have highlighted there for seasons. And that is the word for Moed. That word means appointed feast, the appointed times, festivals, meeting place. Nowhere here does this necessarily, I'm not saying it doesn't mean summer, spring, winter, fall, but that is our common reading when we just read this in English, that we think that's what it means. Because clearly the lights, the days and the nights also would represent those specific seasons, but I believe it is much deeper as it represents a specific feast.
Chris,
Yes.
can you speak up? They can't hear you.
They can't hear you. They gotta get here. That's how they get here. Can you hear me just fine?
I'm getting texts that they
Okay.
can't hear you on YouTube.
Okay, all right, okay. Can you guys hear me now? There we go. Why don't you come closer? I need a microphone, I think, is what I'm sorry. Again. Okay, so let's go ahead and look on a little bit deeper. Wow, these really work really nice. Not having Liz do it. So what are these appointed times and what are they about? Is that better, guys? Okay. First one is Passover. So these appointed times that show up in first up here that we know, they're known as Leviticus. They appear right there in the book of Leviticus. And these are Passover. What does Passover represent? It represents his shed blood when Christ died on the cross. He passed over our sin to give us life. Okay? Unleavened bread represents when Jesus was buried for 3 days and for 3 nights. And these represent the feast. The other one is the Feast of Weeks, the first fruits in Shavuot. This is where he was resurrected, ascends, and sends his Holy Spirit. Being passionate about the gospel, this is the thing that gets left out every time, right? Here it is, right here in creation. He created these Moedim, his perfect plan, his redemption for our souls. So when we look up at the sun, moon, and the stars in their rotation, they are for our redemption. And we miss that, and then we don't talk about it ever again. And he's asked us, the cool part about the Passover, unleavened bread, and the Feast of Weeks, this is a season. This is a season of time. Every year he wants you to remember. When it comes to, in the standard Christian church, we talk about this in regards of Easter, okay? And I'm not saying what they're talking about is wrong, because they're still talking about his death, his burial, and his resurrection. But it's fast food version. They're just giving it to us in a fast food realm. You might get
donut. They're getting the donut.
Yeah, so if you went to Nate's church, Nate never preached a sermon over 30, 40 minutes long. So if you went to a Resurrection Sunday service, you got this for 30, 40 minutes. Then you go home and then the kids might play, and you might have
watch football.
You might have an Easter bunny, you do something, right?
Colored eggs.
You might do all those things, right? But right here, he said this is a season. This takes months to celebrate, to really, and he wants you each year to remember these things that take a time. So why does this have to do with enclosed cosmology? Well, in enclosed cosmology, we don't have new stars, new moon, all these things that they're saying, right? So in a never-ending, expanding universe, you have going to be new constellations, new stars appearing, all these things showing up. And we know that's not true. And so what can Satan do to change this? He can change those times, those seasons. He can change them. And I believe that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to change, with cosmology, to say that we stand still, and then all these other things are starting to come in. When they change what is out there, they start to change the plan and the purpose, what is for us. And I believe right here it starts with that in this. But that's not what they're just doing. Because This is all about hiding God and what he's done for us. But what they're really trying to do is hide something more. What could be more than just that? What would they hide? Because that is the most important parts of our faith, is the death, burial, and resurrection of our Messiah. If we have that, we have. If we don't have that, we have nothing. But the fall feast tells us another story that has yet to happen.
Right, the second coming.
The day of trumpets, the final return of Jesus, Yeshua. The day of atonement, where he eliminates sin and binds Satan for 1,000 years. We have Sukkot, where he dwells with man for 1,000 years, and we rejoice. And then the 8th day, where new heavens, a new earth, a new beginnings, and a final rest happens. They're not just hiding God, they're hiding his return.
Mm-hmm.
If they can tell you that there is a God, like we always say, there's so many people in biblical cosmology, or not biblical cosmology, just in flat earth. They all say they're hiding a creator. They're hiding a creator. This conference is entitled on the back, Finding the Creator Through Creation. Yet we all didn't agree who that creator was. There's only one who's told you he's coming back for you.
That's right.
That is who they're trying to hide. If Satan can get you to tell you he's not coming back, you start picking for other gods. You start looking at other things. But that is the most exciting part. It's what the Bible calls our blessed hope. That is what was created right there, not only in creation, on day 4 of creation, when he created the sun, moon, and the stars, he created these Moedim, this perfect plan for his death, burial, and resurrection for us, that we can come into covenant with him, and that he's going to come and reign with us for eternity. And that is what they're truly trying to hide from us, that there is a God that you can know, and that he's coming back for you. And so I'll end it just like that. If you're watching and you don't know who he is, today is your day of salvation. Get to know him, and he has a plan for you. So that's how we end it there. So we're going to be doing a full presentation, Take on the World TV, where we went through all those slides really fast. But that was the point, and that was the purpose to what we did. So that is it, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I believe air purification,
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna put this up a little bit here again. Now you got this gargantuan. Okay. All right. Hopefully my head's not cut off again. So okay, looking good. Okay, so we have a little bit of time. I just confirmed when we need to be out of here. We need to be out of here by 4:30, and we have a 4:30 reservation for dinner anyway. So we have about 20 minutes before we need to head out. So I want to take just a couple more minutes for some announcements, and then whatever time we have left, we just kind of visit, clean up. If anybody is interested in purchasing one of my books, I have that here. I have a couple other books available. Those pamphlets, the trifolds are free. Feel free to just take a few of them. I want to share a couple of things real quick. Don't want to forget this. On Take on the World TV YouTube channel, I will be starting a new series called Journey to Truth. It'll be starting most likely the first week of January. Chris and I have already done some discussion on it. We'll hammer out some final details, but it sounds like our first episode, Chris will basically be co-hosting with me, and we're going to share just some basics about, well, what is a journey to truth, and what does that entail. And the Journey to Truth series will not just be biblical cosmology, flat earth. There may be all kinds of different truths, and I don't claim to have all truth, and neither does Chris, but we are definitely going to heavily be leaning towards the journey of truth. We're not saying all of these things that we declare are 100% truth and we have all knowledge. What we're trying to get people to do is to recognize that truth is a destination, it's a journey, and there are processes involved, like context, like discernment, like prayer, okay, like study,
like discussions with like-minded people. All of those things, and sometimes even tragedies. I mean, let's be honest, even traumatic experiences like, my firing and how all that affected me and my family and different things. That was an important step to what was coming next in truth. And so I think, those will be some of the key points that we'll share, and that will start again in January. To start off, we may just do one per month. We're going to see about that. What we don't want to do is just slap stuff together and put it on YouTube. We want every episode to be something of value to those listening and watching. Another thing I want to mention is that I'm really also excited about this. In 2020, actually officially now, I am going to be doing some part-time work with Paul on the plane, Paul Lindbergh. I'm basically an independent contractor doing a little bit of work each week, helping him with some items on his website and his podcast. Not so much from a webmaster perspective, he has somebody that does that, but we're developing some new things for 2020. We're hoping to have sort of a top 10, in case you missed it, here's what's going on in Flat Earth community, which is going to be up on the website starting in January. Also, I don't want to spill too many beans, but we came up with an idea for something to help people who don't have a meetup in their area, okay? They're always having to travel maybe somewhere else. And we've come up with an idea that we're still fleshing out, but very soon we hope to have kind of a meetup in a box, so to speak, where you can request it and we will send it to you. And the box will have some startup information, kind of a real basic, here's how you can start a meetup in your local area. And we encourage that. And yes, I'm Nate Wolfe, Fired for Truth, but over a year ago, when my wife and I decided, well, there's nothing in the Toledo area that we know of, and we love Cleveland, and we drive to Cleveland a lot, but we were like, Cleveland is at least an hour and a half away to the edge. Some parts are 3 hours away if you go on the other side. But we decided, look, Toledo is a big enough area, we need to do something. And I checked with a guy who lives in Sylvania, which is on the other side of Toledo, west of here. And he said he's been in Flat Earth since it started in this generation in 2014-ish. And he says, no, I've been around this whole time. And he says there's never been a public Toledo Flat Earth area meetup. So my wife said, well, what's our problem? You're like, why don't we start one? I'm like, well, why do we have to start one? We're already doing a lot of stuff. She's like, well, he that complaineth volunteereth, That's not King James, although it kind of sounds like it. So we started one up. And you know what? I had never done a meetup before. I had been to a few meetups. We took some notes. We did some brainstorming. So be on the lookout for that. I do want to plug the website, paulontheplane.com. And soon you'll be able to go to paulontheplane.com/calendar. And there'll also be, what we're putting together is a community calendar of events. So things like meetups, things like conferences, things like special events. We are going to have a monthly calendar where you can just go to paulontheplane.com/calendar and you can click on different days. It'll pop up and you can click on those days and you can get detailed information, where, when, who's the contact. And I will be spearheading the information for the calendar. So I have an email address that's different from my Fired for Truth stuff. If you want to reach out to me with pertinent information that would go on an events calendar, message me, Nate@paulontheplane.com, which is, I think that's really cool. So I have Nate@paulontheplane.com, and you can email me and send me information. Hopefully in the next couple weeks, we'll have some of those New Year startup ideas going. So right now they're a work in progress, but I just wanted to pitch that so people would know that that's a thing, or going to soon be a thing. So a lot happening in 2020. It's exciting. I know with the conferences, most people by now have heard that Robbie Davidson will no longer be heading up the Flat Earth International Conference. Well, he's not sure if someone wants to take that over lock, stock, and barrel, or if it's going to be kind of like a
a mother who kind of spawns, these different events. And so I know there are some other conference events that are in the works. I don't have the details on that. I'm not involved in any leadership. I heard a rumor that there may be an event in 2020, FEIC-like kind of event, for lack of a better description, probably in Las Vegas, Nevada. So you're either super excited about that, or maybe you're just like, oh, Sin City. But let's be honest, there's sin in every city, so there's that. But I know people like Paul on the Plane, Rick Hummer, David Weiss, others are looking into, hey, what new things can we start? But all that to say, aside from a few of the big conferences and Take on the World and things that happen each year, what's really super important in the month to month is meetings like this. I mean, it's grassroots, it's people in your area. We have people that come to the Toledo meetup regularly from 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours away. Now, that tells you something about why these, it tells you that these meetings are important, because somebody's willing to drive that each way. They're going to do as much driving almost as their hours spent in a meeting like this. Or we have a fellowship, a food fellowship, usually afterwards. So grassroots, get involved. All it takes is you being willing to say, I'm going to start something up in my area. Now, if you say, hey, I'm going to start something up in Howell, Michigan, or wherever, I'm your guy to come and, try to help. I'm not going to put that together, but if it works with my schedule and I can try to come within an hour or two, for sure, I'm willing to help with that. So that's all I'm going to say for now. I'll cut my stream here on Facebook, and then we'll spend the next 10 or 15 minutes just kind of fellowshipping, take a look at some of this stuff if you're interested, and then we'll go on over to our restaurant, which I can basically almost show you from the parking lot. So thank you guys so much. Thanks for everybody watching online. Feel free to share this information with others, and Take on the World TV. I may decide to capture the video from Facebook and put it up on my Fired for Truth YouTube. We'll see about that. It'll be a large file. So anyway, thank you guys so much, and we'll just spend some time together for about the next 10-15, and then we'll pack up and move out. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.